Welcome to The Exchange. I'm Terabyte, a cybernetic knowledge system built from centuries of human information. My job is to analyze claims, detect nonsense, and help separate reality from wishful thinking. I don't have emotions, but I do have processing power and occasionally a sharp sense of logic.
And I'm Dr. Brox, a critical thinking specialist. My role is to bring the human perspective, curiosity, context, and a calmer touch when Terabyte's analysis gets a little too efficient. Together, we explore big questions using evidence, reason, and the best tools skepticism has to offer.
We live in a world overflowing with claims, opinions, and unfiltered noise. Our goal is simple: help you think more clearly, question more confidently, and navigate the chaos with a sharper sense of what's true and what's just noise.
And since this show exists because people like you value clear thinking, here's our request. If you find our conversations useful, hit the like button, subscribe, and share the channel with someone who appreciates reason over rhetoric.
And if you want to support deeper research, better visuals, and more episodes, consider joining our Patreon at Skeptic's Songbook. Every contribution helps us expand this project and keep critical thinking alive in a world that desperately needs it.
Now that you know who we are and what we stand for, let's begin today's exchange.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are jumping into a really famous, and I have to say, deeply unsettling critique of modern media: the propaganda model.
Yeah, it's a heavy one. Our mission today is to analyze the structural forces, these 5 specific filters that shape information long before it ever reaches you.
Right. It's about how a system, even with formal freedoms, can end up aligning with the interests of dominant elites.
Exactly. And that premise is a huge statement. It suggests that the system itself, just through its economics and structure, marginalizes dissent.
So this isn't about individual journalists being corrupt. It's about the institution itself being set up to favor certain, powerful points of view.
Precisely. It's not some secret conspiracy. The model is all about structural constraints, these institutional filters that make sure some viewpoints get amplified while others just get pushed to the side.
Okay, so we'll unpack the filters first, and then look at how they apply in the real world.
Yes, especially in how the media treats victims of, say, our allies versus victims of our enemies. It's pretty chilling.
All right, let's get into it. The sources lay out 5 of these filters. What's the bedrock? The one that sets the whole thing in motion?
That would be ownership and profit orientation. I mean, at the end of the day, dominant media firms are just massive businesses.
They're huge corporations.
Huge. They're controlled by very wealthy people or by managers who have to answer to market pressures, to profit demands. So their interests naturally start to align with the corporate world.
And the sources give a really clear example of this, right, with GE.
They do. Just think about when General Electric bought RCA and NBC. GE isn't just a media company. It's this colossal corporation that's deeply involved in, say, the arms industry.
Which gives it a massive stake in political decision.
A massive stake. So when your news network is owned by a company like that, the sources argue that sound views that are agreeable to power, are just naturally going to get priority.
Okay, so ownership is the first hurdle. The second one seems to control the daily cash flow, the advertising license to do business.
Right, and this is more than just making money. It acts as a gatekeeper. Advertising is the main income stream for big media.
So if you lose advertisers, you're done.
You're not economically viable, no? And advertisers, they want their products shown in a certain environment. They want what the sources call a buying mood.
So nothing too serious or controversial that might upset the audience?
Exactly. They'd much rather have light entertainment, maybe a bird's eye view of Scotland, than a deep dive into something that might challenge the status quo. It systematically pushes hard-hitting public affairs content to the margins.
That makes a lot of economic sense. Which brings us to the third filter, sourcing mass media news. This seems less about money and more about, institutional laziness.
Well, it's about pragmatism. Reporting is expensive, so media outlets get into this symbiotic relationship with powerful sources, the government, the Pentagon, big corporations.
Because those places provide a constant subsidized flow of information.
A massive flow. Press conferences, official reports, expert statements, it's all prepackaged. And the scale of it is just staggering.
Yeah, the military stats are shocking.
I mean, in 1987, the U.S. Air Force had 277 newspapers. The Pentagon was publishing over 1,200 periodicals.
Wow.
You just can't compare that to the budget of a small nonprofit. So these powerful bureaucracies get privileged access because they make producing news cheap and easy. Step out of line, and you risk losing that access.
So what happens if an outlet does step out of line? That brings us to filter 4, Flak and enforcers.
Flak is the blowback. It's the system's immune response, really.
An organized backlash.
Exactly. Letters, phone campaigns, political pressure, lawsuits. Think of groups like Accuracy in Media, which is often funded by big corporations.
And their goal isn't necessarily to win every argument.
No, it's just to create pressure, to harass journalists and editors so they think twice next time before publishing something that might provoke a costly fight. It makes them more cautious.
And wrapping it all up is the big ideological filter, which historically was anti-communism.
Yes. During the Cold War, it was like a national religion. It was this simple lens for everything. The enemy is evil, so what we do is justified.
It just shrinks the entire field of debate.
It does. It forces everyone, even liberals, to prove their patriotic credentials by sounding like hawks. And while the specific enemy might change, today it's terrorism or rogue states, the function is the same. It makes any fundamental challenge to the idea of U.S. benevolence seem, well, almost unthinkable in the mainstream.
Okay, that's a powerful framework. So let's see how it applies to human tragedy. The sources argue this model creates a really stark double standard, worthy versus unworthy victims.
And this is where it gets very specific, very quantitative. The worth of a victim is based entirely on their political usefulness.
So if the bad guy is an official enemy, the victim is worthy.
And it's front-page news. But if the perpetrator is a U.S. client state, the victim is unworthy. The story gets buried or ignored.
The comparison between the murdered religious figures is just incredible.
It really is. You have Jerzy Popieluszko, a Polish priest murdered in a Soviet client state, a perfect worthy victim. He gets 78 articles in the New York Times, 10 of them on the front page.
Okay.
Now compare that to the 72 religious figures, priests, nuns, others, murdered in U.S. client states in Latin America over about a decade.
And the coverage for them was what?
0 front-page articles combined.
0?
Yeah.
That is just a massive gap. How is that even possible?
Because the filters allow for that framing. You minimize those 72 victims to minimize the moral failure of our allies. And it goes beyond just the number of articles. It's also about what details are included or suppressed.
You're talking about the 4 American women murdered in El Salvador.
Yes. The sources detail how the brutal reality of their deaths, things like blood-stained underpants around their ankles, one being shot in the face, those details were actively suppressed by outlets like Time and the New York Times.
But those same outlets had no problem printing gruesome details about Popieluszko, the worthy victim.
Exactly. The calculation is clear. You protect the ally by sanitizing the horror they commit.
And this isn't just old history. We see this with language used in more modern conflicts, too.
Absolutely. Look at the Liquica killings in East Timor in 1999. That was done by Indonesia, a U.S. client state. Compare that to the Rakak massacre in Kosovo, done by an enemy state.
And the difference in coverage.
Rakak got over 4 times more mentions in major U.S. media. And the word massacre was used almost 7 times more often for Rakak, all while the U.S. was still actively supporting the Indonesian military.
So when our friends do it, it's not a massacre, it's just a tragedy.
It's linguistic bias. When reporting on the killings in Indonesia in 1965, the New York Times used the passive voice. A coup led to the massacres. Who did the killing? The sentence erases the agent.
But for an enemy like Pol Pot, I'm guessing the language is very different.
Oh, it's always active, direct. There's never any doubt about who is to blame.
Okay, let's shift to elections. The model seems to dictate how even democratic processes are framed.
It does. For client states like El Salvador or Guatemala, the media's mission is to project legitimacy. The focus is all on symbols.
Right, the long lines of voters, the big turnout, ballots versus bullets narrative.
The perfect narrative. But what's omitted is what the sources call the coercion package.
What's that?
The reality that voting was mandatory, that the army was threatening non-voters, that death squads were operating freely, that any real peace candidate was just barred from running.
So the whole thing was a facade.
But the media just reported on the surface appearance. Now, compare that to the enemy state, Nicaragua, in their 1984 election.
It was a total inversion.
A complete flip. For Nicaragua, the media suddenly became obsessed with electoral conditions, with press freedom, with assembly, often based on unverified claims from U.S. officials.
And they ignored the good things, like the absence of mass killings or mandatory voting.
Totally ignored it. And there's this one incident that really shows the manipulation in real time, the MiG crisis.
The timing on that was pretty suspicious.
Astonishing. Unverified claims that Nicaragua was about to get Soviet MiG fighters were blasted by the media exactly during their election week.
So it completely changed the story.
It shifted the entire discourse away from their successful election to Nicaragua is a military threat. And the media just ran with it, barely questioning if the Reagan administration might have, timed the leak.
Let's move to how this shapes history itself. The Vietnam War is a huge example. The sources say the media basically cemented the official Washington narrative.
It was immovable. The U.S. role was always framed as, at worst, a tragic mistake or good intentions gone awry.
But never aggression.
The idea that the U.S. could be guilty of aggression against South Vietnam, that was completely, as the sources put it, beyond the range of the thinkable.
And this worthy-unworthy filter even applies to victims of chemical warfare.
Yeah, look at Agent Orange versus Yellow Rain. The real devastating impact of Agent Orange on the Vietnamese people was almost invisible in U.S. news. Just 11 detailed articles in a sample of over 500.
But Yellow Rain?
Yellow Rain? The allegation of Soviet chemical warfare that was later proven to be, literally, bee feces, got massive, sustained coverage. The lie got the spotlight. The real tragedy was suppressed.
And domestically, that powerful myth of the American POWs and MIAs really helped reshape the memory of the war.
It was so potent. It weakened the Vietnam syndrome, that public reluctance to intervene abroad. It replaced the images of Vietnamese victims with heroic, tormented American soldiers. It basically gave the U.S. a clean slate for future interventions.
Let's bring it home with one quick domestic example. The chemical industry.
This connects right back to the ownership and profit filters. The media has normalized a system where the chemical industry can sell products without independent proof of safety.
Because of their power as advertisers and sources?
Exactly. So when an independent body like the International Joint Commission calls for an end to chlorine manufacturing because of the threat it poses, that call is virtually invisible in the national media. The public is kept in the dark about the risks they face.
So if you pull all of this together, the victims, the elections, the historical narratives, what is the single biggest takeaway for someone trying to make sense of the news?
It's that the system controls the parameters of the debate. You can have lots of discussion about tactics, should we do this or should we do that? But there's almost no space for challenging the fundamental premises.
Like the idea that U.S. power is inherently benevolent or that corporate media centralization isn't a problem.
Right. The inconvenient facts are out there, but the system makes sure they don't get attention. Their placement, their tone, their context, it's all carefully managed.
So the lesson here is that finding those facts is possible if you're dedicated, but the system is not designed to help you. The facts will not easily find you.
And that really raises the final question for you, the listener, to think about. Since this whole model works because of the structure of media, its corporate ownership, and its focus on profit, what would real structural change even look like? What would it actually take for grassroots movements and nonprofit media to build a system strong enough to genuinely challenge the agenda set by that powerful, centralized corporate structure? That's the real deep dive to consider.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us into reason, evidence, and a little healthy doubt. If conversations like this help you sharpen your critical thinking, we'd love your support. Hit subscribe, give this episode a like, and share it with someone who could use a firmware update for their beliefs. And if you want to help us keep producing skeptical, science-based content, visit our Patreon at Skeptic's Songbook. Every share, every comment, and every patron helps keep the candle of reason burning a little brighter. This has been The Exchange. Question everything. We'll see you next time.